This week, Jimmy gets retro-futuristic with Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, Insomniac's Ted Price tells us all about Fuse, and we wander down the shops and end up in 1995. This is Player Attack. But first, the latest gaming news, and a couple of classic gaming franchises are set to make a big comeback in the second half of 2013. First off, Bethesda has officially announced a brand new take on the Wolfenstein saga.
While I was gone, they set the world on fire. It wasn't a war anymore. It was a remaking. Some losses are inevitable. Some unthinkable. Now they built a new world. Armies of steel and thunder. They're rewriting history.
There must be some kind of way out of here.
But they forgot about me.
Said a joker to the...
Development duties for this one sit with Machine Games, a Swedish studio made up of bits and pieces of syndicate developer Starbreeze. Coming from a story-driven gaming background, we are keeping our hopes high for this new Wolfenstein, even if this 1960s-style reboot will not feature any multiplayer elements. Another game hoping to reclaim some of its former glory is Command & Conquer. We'd heard a little while ago that Generals 2 was in the works. That one has now been rebranded as simply Command & Conquer. EA and Victory Games are headed back to basics and back to the battlefield in a free-to-play online game that promises to encompass all the things you love about the franchise and none of the stuff you hate. In his own words, lead designer Samuel Bass explains the team is out to wash away the stain of Command & Conquer 4.
First thing we said is we need to kind of wash the stain of CNC4 away, and to do that you really have to get back to your roots, to get back to what it was that made your fans in the first place.
Speaking of Electronic Arts, the publisher has let us know it is shaping up for a big showing at E3 next month. We knew that Battlefield 4 was already on the cards, but a recent earnings call has suggested that DICE is behind another new game that will be on display at the expo, leading many to speculate that Mirror's Edge might be getting its long-awaited sequel. At the same time, we're promised new games from EA Sports, that is, as well as new FIFA, Madden and NBA Live, and there's something on the way from BioWare that may or may not be Dragon Age 3. One game we're not sure if we'll get our hands on just yet is The Sims 4, which has now been confirmed for release next year. It is very early days yet, but we're told the most expressive, surprising and charming pixelated people are on their way. And just when you thought EA couldn't possibly cram anything more into its schedule, the Walt Disney Company has announced an exclusive deal with the publisher that sees EA given exclusive rights to create core games based on the Star Wars franchise. The deal comes after Disney's decision to close LucasArts earlier in the year and sees EA handling all interactive platforms and the most popular game genres. Disney retains the right to create games for mobile, social, tablet and the online markets, and we're hoping that by the use of the word core in all announcements, something like LEGO Star Wars won't be ruled out. Fans have been divided in their opinions of the deal, claiming this is the kiss of death for the Star Wars franchise. But with EA announcing that games are in the works at Battlefield developer DICE, Dead Space developer Visceral, and the Old Republic developer BioWare, we think it's in pretty safe hands. Last week, Blizzard rolled out its 1.0.8 update for Diablo 3. It was supposed to be a simple, straightforward affair, patch a few bugs, tweak some content, add a few bits and pieces, but what the team hadn't banked on was the introduction of a serious exploit that left the game's economy in tatters. The issue was discovered when a gamer cancelled a transaction at the game's real money auction house. Rather than simply halting the transfer, Diablo 3 turned around and doubled the amount of money involved, giving the exploiter a big pile of gold. Apparently, behind the scenes, the developers had increased the gold stack size, which caused an overflow error. We're told that only a relatively small number of players had enough gold to take advantage of the bug, and that only 415 of those players actually used the exploit for personal gain. Blizzard fixed the problem pretty swiftly and decided not to roll back the entire server. Instead, individual accounts were either rolled back or banned depending on the severity of their exploiting. All duplicated gold will be removed through careful audits and account actions, and if your account was not involved, you won't be affected. In a nice touch, while all of the code has now been carefully scrutinised, any proceeds from auctions conducted by the suspended or banned players will be donated to a children's charity. And finally this week, horror master John Carpenter, the acclaimed director of films like Halloween, The Thing and Escape from New York, has set horror gaming fans into a flurry of excitement with just 7 simple words. I would love to direct Dead Space. EA, Visceral, the ball's in your court. For more details and to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, we've got plenty more still to come.
Dust off those video cassettes, fire up those wireframe displays, it's time to travel to the future. 2007?
Welcome to the future. The year is 2007. Nuclear war has nearly destroyed our planet. Now, an evil presence seeks to enslave what's left of humanity. And there's only one thing that can stop it.
Nobody threatens my planet.
Michael Biehn is Sergeant Rex Power Colt.
Ubisoft's expansion to last year's massive Far Cry 3 has just been released and it's making a big impression. Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon is a throwback to the time of hair metal and skin-tight leather. You play as Rex Power Colt, a Mark IV cyborg built for warfare. His mission is to stop the evil Omega Force, led by Colonel Sloan, from unleashing an evil bioweapon upon the world. Let me level with you here. This game does not have a series of plot twists or a mystery to uncover. This is a straight-up, pea and ham, blow up the bad guys type of game. The story it tells is certainly a lot of fun, but it's about as deep as your average teaspoon. That said, I love the setting for this game. It's being marketed as an 80s VHS style version of 2007, and really, there's not a lot of other periods a story about a group of cyborgs fighting over dinosaur blood would fit. And it's not just the retro-futuristic lighting and the Harold Faltermeyer-esque soundtrack either. Every little element is rooted in maintaining that big 80s sci-fi action movie feel. Colt heals himself by either performing quick surgeries on his mechanical hand or exercising with his organic one. The loading screens deliberately invoke a VHS player, and that was a particular highlight for me. My main issue is, within story anyway, there doesn't really appear to be anything done with the setting. Most of the set-piece battles happen in what could be any military complex, all cold and grey and lifeless. And all of the weapons are functionally the same as standard FPS weapons, without anything outside of aesthetics to really let you know that you're playing a sci-fi game. The game does, however, pepper this with amazing self-awareness. It knows exactly what it is. It's got a genuine 80s movie star, Michael Biehn from Terminator spewing one-liners, action and innuendos run rampant, and the cutscenes look like something from the SNES. I found the game was a lot of fun, when it wanted to be. Around the time I got the hang glider, I realized this game is just doing cool things because they're cool to do, and I found moving around the admittedly huge and really interesting world hard going, even after stealing a Jeep. And after literally punching a nuclear reactor, the capture the base and rescue a hostage side missions didn't seem really interesting enough to do. Technically, the game feels great, albeit nothing particularly groundbreaking. There were occasional graphics and physics glitches, but luckily every time I got frustrated with them, something really cool happened to keep me interested. For example, I had to reload a save at one point because the last enemy in a kill 'em all scenario got lodged in a wall and couldn't be seen. Straight after I completed said mission, I was treated to an 80s training montage. Well, that was enough for me to forgive and forget. It's still a game-breaking bug, and that will rub some people the wrong way. Your basic hazards include cybernetic soldier mooks, heavies armed with chain guns and flamethrowers, and the local wildlife. Snakes, alligators, sharks, and the titular blood dragons all think you're delicious, and will attempt to make life as difficult for you as possible if you annoy them. It is totally possible, and in some cases necessary, to trick these monsters into fighting your enemies for you. The AI in this game is not that great. More than once I was able to fool enemy soldiers into drowning themselves, but luckily that doesn't make them any less fun to mow down. Where this game shines is its openness. There doesn't appear to be any set way to solve any given problem. A stealth approach using distraction and silent kills is just as effective as sniping from a long distance, which works just as well as driving a car into the base and charging in guns blazing. The game doesn't compensate for how well you do at any one given approach, so there's no real encouragement to try anything new. You'll probably find yourself sticking to one scenario over another most of the time. The setting is probably going to be enough to sell this to a lot of people. The story and the cool stuff you can do within that story will probably endear it to a lot more. If you can get into a game that wholeheartedly rips off aliens in one mission, then this could be the game for you. It's cheesy, it's shameless about it, and it clearly loves its source material.
Fuse will change the way we go to war, the way we hunt, the way we profit.
It'll topple governments, create fear.
It will show the world what it's like to feel truly vulnerable. But we have a wrinkle.
Fuse is a brand new third-person cooperative shooter from Insomniac Games. This is a game we've been working on for a while. We've been very excited about it because it brings to the table some new features for co-op, and at the same time, it's a game that we have built for players who want to play on their own. So, 4 characters. We have Dalton Brooks, who is a former mercenary for the bad guys in the game, Raven, who left and joined Overstrike. He is the tank of the group, and he has the mag shield, which is the result of combining ferrofluid and fuse, this volatile alien substance. And as he moves through the game, he can unlock different abilities for the mag shield, and of course he can use all the other weapons in the game, which makes him a cool character. We have Naya Devereaux, who is a former assassin recruited by Overstrike. Her father figures prominently into the game as well, and you meet him as you're moving through the story. Her specialty is using the warp rifle, which is the result of combining fuse and antimatter. And what you do with the warp rifle is you can coat enemies with this warp antimatter coating and then trigger a black hole, which tears the enemy inside out, but also sends out a shockwave, which either knocks other enemies down or triggers additional black holes if they've been covered with that warp antimatter mixture. Later she can unlock the ability to disincorporate, go stealthy, and she becomes a really good flanker for the team. Then we have Jacob Kimball, former LAPD detective who was kicked off the force, joined Overstrike, and is the distant damage dealer. He has the arc shot, which is fuse combined with liquid mercury. What the fuse does is superheats the mercury, so when he's firing into enemies, he's doing a lot of burn damage. He can immolate them, he can pin them to walls, but ultimately he unlocks a trap function, so we can fire these bolts into any object, including enemies, and trigger streams of molten mercury, which will go out and melt enemies. Then finally we have Izzy Sinclair, and Izzy is a former intelligence broker who was brought into Overstrike because of her technical skills. She has a shatter gun. The shatter gun fires a combination of black melanite, which is an exotic crystal that actually exists, and fuse. And what that does is it turns enemies into these black crystalline structures. More importantly, it raises them up from behind cover so they become great targets for your teammates. And it sends out additional branches of crystal which will crystallize nearby enemies. Makes it a really good crowd control weapon and makes Izzy a great crowd control specialist. Finally, she can unlock a healing beacon, which she can lob across the battlefield to revive down teammates. But I find it's really useful to just drop one at my feet and keep myself healthy in big firefights. Now, what's important about all of these characters and their abilities is they do work together all the time. And when you're playing the game, we constantly encourage players to come together to play co-op in a cooperative fashion. We don't force it down their throats. And the way we do this is by providing bigger and bigger rewards when players do combine their fuse weapons. Simple example, just firing through Dalton's shield, if I'm That gives both of us points. Dalton gets points because he's supporting me in my efforts to take down enemies, and I'm getting points because, well, I'm killing enemies. And we can combine all 4 weapons, and there are over or close to 60 different combinations that you can trigger by using these weapons. So Leap is a key feature in the game. It allows you to, at will, move between all 4 characters as long as those characters are being played by AI. And one of the things I find most enjoyable is, as a solo player, I have 3 other characters I can choose from. Because those characters have very different skill sets based on their fuse-powered weapons, when I leap into them, I have a very different gameplay experience. So Echelon is a battle mode. It is what we call co-petitive. You are working as a team to take on some pretty cool objectives in these big 12-round battles, but you're also competing for cash rewards like the classic game Smash TV. So you have big bags of cash falling down, we've got big gold bars, and whoever gets to them first wins. Now these are called fuse credits in the game, and fuse credits open up another part of our progression system. The more fuse credits you earn, the more team perks you can buy and upgrade. And those team perks are persistent buffs that you can apply to your character. So 1 gets applied per character. With fuse credits, you can also buy gear in the game. And of course, this is not real money. This is all just the credits that you pick up in the game. But it's just, for us, it was really fun to add that sort of arcadey aspect to the game through Echelon. The real attraction was to reach the Xbox 360 audience. I mean, we love our PlayStation 3 fans, absolutely. But we had a lot of people from the Xbox 360 camp asking us, so when are you guys going to make a game for Xbox players? And we certainly couldn't take Ratchet or Resistance to the Xbox because they're owned by Sony. So this was a chance for us to kind of do a lot of things at once. Build new technology, address a different audience, and build a new world and a new IP, which is the kind of thing we love to do at Insomniac. It doesn't matter what kind of player you are. I mean, we tried to build this game for the fans of Insomniac Games because it has, as I said, all the elements that we love to put into our games. Crazy over-the-top weapons, what we think is a compelling story, unique characters, and absolutely very different and, we hope, groundbreaking cooperative features.
Jimmy the Geek here in 1995. The big news this year, 3 new consoles, 3 separate companies, 3 very different reactions. The most warmly received of these new consoles is also from the newest entrant. The Sony PlayStation, which was spawned from an argument with Nintendo about a CD add-on, has dominated the market this year. Its CPU, capable of 33 MHz, and its 2-speed CD drive have made Sony a viable contender in the console wars. It's not entirely without criticism, however. Several of the system's anti-piracy measures are preventing dedicated gamers from importing titles from overseas. Hopefully Sony will listen and find a more effective way of managing their digital rights. The most direct competition for the PlayStation comes from Sega, who released a new powerful CD-based console themselves. The Sega Saturn boasts a dual CPU, certainly a contender in terms of power, but allegedly making the system hard to develop for. This probably wasn't helped by Sega moving the release date so far forward, and consumers are wary after the decided failure of last year's 32X and the Sega CD the year before. Many are reluctant to buy a brand new console. Nintendo have released a new handheld capable of simulating 3D. The Virtual Boy, supposed successor to 1989's Game Boy, promises immersive gaming through its stereoscopic headset design. Using 2 LEDs and a series of mirrors, the system projects sprites into the player's eyes directly. It boasts a lot of memory for a handheld at 128 kilobytes of DRAM and a shiny, lightning-fast CPU. However, early sales are not promising for the Game Boy follow-up, with users reporting headaches and motion sickness after use. Undeterred, Nintendo have released 2 innovative new titles for their home console. Yoshi's Island, a sequel to Super Mario World, puts players in control of Yoshi as he escorts a baby Mario around the Mushroom Kingdom in an origin story. The colourful, crayon-esque graphics complement the always tight Mario gameplay, and continues the strange condition of having the second game in a series being somewhat of a black sheep. The second title, Earthbound, is a bizarre game out of Japan. The sequel to Mother, which remains unreleased in the US, puts players in control of Ness, a young boy befriended by a star child after a meteor crashes in his backyard. Notable enemies for the game include dogs, ants, punks, and a giant computer mainframe that speaks gibberish. Most interestingly, the game forgoes the standard random encounter model and actually allows players to see, and therefore avoid, the monsters they're attacking. To the PC now, and developers are aiming to scare us a little bit more. Sierra, more squarely aimed at the family market, have released Phantasmagoria, the first in a series of horror games, each focusing on a different style of horror. Cyberdreams, veterans of fear games because of 1992's Darkseid, featuring artwork by H.R. Giger, have again joined forces with a horror artist, this time author Harlan Ellison, in an adaptation of his post-apocalyptic horror story starring a maniacal computer torturing 5 people. I have no mouth and I must scream. Finally, LucasArts have released a new adventure game helmed by Monkey Island and Maniac Mansion alumnus Tim Schafer. The game explores Schafer's interest in motorcycle lifestyle and features a soundtrack by genuine biker band The Gaunt Jackals. Full Throttle uses a further refined version of the Scum engine and revolves around Ben, leader of the Polecats, solving a mystery behind being framed for murder. Schafer hopes that one section from the game which was cut, involving the main character exploring other characters' minds, can be expanded into a full game concept later down the line. I'm Jimmy the Geek in 1995 for Player Attack.
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack, but we do have one more important announcement to make. Firstly, thanks to everybody who entered our competition to win a Turtle Beach Call of Duty headset. We were blown away by the number of you who took the time to tell us what you wanted to see in Player Attack, and we are really looking forward to implementing some of those new features. Proving that gaming really is not just something for kids, entries range from 10-year-olds to 63-year-olds, and there are all sorts of titles on your wish lists. However, there can only be one winner, and in this case, it is Ben Graham from Croydon, Victoria. Congratulations! We are currently lining up another great competition for you guys, so if you've got any ideas for prizes, send us an email. Next week, it is time to take a close look at the next-gen consoles due out this year, with new machines on the way from both Microsoft and Sony. Then, when we're just settling into the future, Jimmy the Geek mixes things up again with an update from 1996. In the meantime, you can catch us on playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.